Stranger Things, Tales from 85. Masterpiece? Hot garbage? I don't know. Stay tuned to the review to find out, guys. What is up, my party people, and welcome back to the Circuitron Media channel. This go around, we are doing our second review on the channel, which will be covering Stranger Things, Tales from 85. It's a 10-episode first season of a new-ish Stranger Things animated show, and I'm here to give you my thoughts, my impressions, and a score on the overall season. As with our last review, we'll be covering the content in 3 categories. The first one being great, which cover the things I really enjoy and really resonated with. The next category being meh, okay, which will cover the stuff I kind of questioned a little bit and didn't really resonate with me throughout the season. And then finally, the last category is really, and that's going to be the stuff that I really questioned and did not necessarily enjoy about the season. At the end, I'll give it an overall score and my final impressions, and we will wrap up our second review on the channel. Without any further ado, though, guys, let's jump right in to our review of Stranger Things, Tales from 85, Season 1. So to start off in our great category, the first thing I have down is the voice performances. Overall, I thought the cast did a really good job. Obviously, not every single one of them sounds just like their main show counterpart. I didn't go in expecting that anyways, with it being an all-new cast, with it actually being kids playing the kids this time around again. I didn't expect everyone to be spot on. I didn't expect it to sound just like them. But what we got, I thought they did a really good job for the most part. Some particular standouts, I really enjoyed the kid that played Dustin. I really enjoyed the kid that played Lucas and the kid that played Max. I thought those were the 3 closest to the original cast, just with their inflections, their comedic timing, stuff like that. I really thought those 3 actors specifically really hit it out of the park. But overall, there's not really an actor that I really wanted to single out and say they didn't do a good job, anything like that. I thought the voice performances were actually pretty impressive, and I was still immersed into the world of the show and believed it was the characters that we grew to love throughout Stranger Things' main 5 seasons. My next point that I have down is pacing of the story. So overall, I thought that this season was pretty dang well paced. The first episode starts a little bit slower. We have that nice introductory episode like we get with the main series. And then at the end of that episode, we have a big cliffhanger. There's small moments of action throughout that first episode, but for all intents and purposes, it's very much an introductory episode. Then going on further into the season, I really like that we did get a lot of moments of levity in between action-y episodes. So, for example, episode 5, The Weekly Watcher. It starts out a little bit slower. There's a lot of very character-driven moments where the kids are talking to each other and they're planning this great heist to get this photo back. And then the end of the episode is just balls to the wall, craziness. They pull off the heist. So I thought the pacing of that was really well done, because we have the moments of levity, the character moments, and then we have the crazy action sequence. Same thing can be said later on in the season. We have episode 9, which was a much slower, more methodical episode where the kids are breaking into Nikki's house and into the greenhouse and trying to solve the mystery and see who Horde Prime is and what's going on. And then that leads directly into episode 10, which is just crazy the entire time. And then throughout the entire season, really, you get that. You get your highs and you get your lows. You get these crazy action sequences, and then they go back to the drawing board and they think about things and what's going on. Same thing with the Hawkins Investigators Club. When it's first formed, you have them forming the club, and then they get the shoe boxes with all the clues. And then later on, that's when they follow these leads, and things just start getting more and more crazy, leading up to the farm, McCorkle Farm, where there's this massive pumpkin jerk-o'-lantern is what they call it, I guess, the pumpkins in the show. Just this big horde of them. So overall, I thought the season was paced really well, where we get a lot of great character moments and we get a lot of great action sequences. All right, I guess we have a visitor now for this one. My little kitty decided to come say hi. So my next main point is going to be callbacks to the main series. Um, Although there weren't a ton that I caught myself, I always appreciate when the overall lore sticks together and we get callbacks and references to previous seasons, and in this case, to future seasons. So some of the particular callbacks I really, really enjoyed seeing was, I believe, episode 2, when they go back to Hawkins' lab, they have that flashback to when 11 is closing the gate in season 2. That really cool animated, really quick flashback when she touches the wall where the gate was. Going on further, we have that return to McCorkle Farm a couple times throughout the season, and that it also includes the kid that pulled out the toy gun on Hopper in season 2. So that just kind of ties everything together. And then the other big one I noticed was Starcourt Mall billboard and all the Scoops Ahoy advertisements. That was kind of foreshadowing to what would be coming up within the timeline on the show. So I really enjoyed the callbacks and the references that we got to the main series. It still makes us feel like we're in the world of Stranger Things, having all of this stuff that's related and ties in exactly where our timeline's at. Because obviously the show's set between seasons 2 and 3. There's going to be a lot of billboards for Starcourt Mall. There's billboards for Scoops Ahoy, stuff like that. So I really appreciated having some of those callbacks in this show. My next point in great is definitely the music. It's Stranger Things. Did we even have a question if the music was going to be great? No, it's amazing music as usual. We have the score that is in the background throughout the entire season. We still have some amazing synthwave tracks, a lot of very, very vibey tracks. It sounds just like music and just like transitions from the main series. So the music in the background is spot on. On top of that, we also have some really, really great needle drops. Again, Stranger Things tradition, we always have some just amazing boppers that play. And it's no different here. Just to name a few, we've got Kids in America. We got The Beat, Rebel Yell, Time After Time. We have a lot of 80s classics that are really infused into the DNA of this show that really, really drive the point home. This is an 80s show. This is Stranger Things. Like, it feels very, very, very much the same in terms of music to the main series. We've got great music throughout. All right, next up, we have, naturally, pop culture references. Just like the main series, would it be Stranger Things without all of the pop culture references? This is something that from season 1 of Stranger Things, we got all the way through season 5 of Stranger Things, and Tales from 85 is no different. Just a few references I enjoyed seeing were the scene with Nikki and Mrs. Baxter, and where she's in the kitchen and she's talking about evolution, and they get on the topic of Alien and the chest bursters. Loved seeing that. We also have the Freddy Krueger standee in Nikki's garage and her mosh pit. There's the little standee in the corner. I thought that was really, really cool. There's also mentions and references to Ghostbusters throughout. That's always been kind of thing. Season 2, we had the kids dressed up as all the Ghostbusters. So I was glad to see little references and little drops here and there relating to Ghostbusters still. Also, we have mention of He-Man and She-Ra, and mention of Horde Prime being the main villain, or the villain that created all of these monsters. So I like that we got a little reference there to She-Ra. And then finally, product placement, we have towards the end Twinkies. Instead of having Eggos, Dustin dumps out a bag full of Twinkies at the end for them to enjoy, and it was the actual 80s packaging. So again, it's cool to see these pop culture references that really, really cement that this show is in the 80s. I have just a little small point to make here, but I also do think that the group dynamics were pretty great. I really, really love that this season focused so much on the kids, the main group of kids. Stranger Things, even though it hasn't always been just about the kids, has always been great about grouping up all these different characters together and experimenting with different groupings. But arguably some of the greatest times in Stranger Things would be back in season 1 and early season 2, where all of the kids are working together and they've got this massive mystery ahead of them. So I was really glad to see that Tales from 85 kind of stepped back to that, where we have all the kids riding bikes together. We have them all getting together in a room for the Hawkins Investigators Club and trying to solve the mystery, and all of them working together during the battle. So I really love that our original party, with, of course, Eleven and Max added into the D&D party, and Nikki, I really, really liked that we have this original group all together for a great, great portion of this season. Also, Nikki, with being a new character, I did really enjoy the interactions they did have with Nikki. I thought there was a lot of just really, really great lessons that were taught amongst the kids to each other, and I just thought that they all vibed off each other really, really well. And I did enjoy the addition of Nikki when it came to how all the kids vibed and got together, and it was great to see Nikki find friends in the kids in Hawkins. So yeah, the group dynamics in this season, I really, really did enjoy. My last point for our great section of the review will definitely have to be having some very, very great scenes. I like to always point out some of the scenes I really, really enjoyed, and in Tales from 85, it's no different. There were some scenes I really loved in each episode, so I'll kind of go through a short little list. We'll flash up little bits on the screen of the scenes, but I really did want to point out the scenes I really enjoyed this season. So episode 1, the snowplow encounter. When all the kids, Dustin goes up to the grandma's house and puts his charm on. He says he's going to shovel her driveway for her. And then the kids get to playing around and all that. And then the monster shows up and drags the snowplow man underneath the plow, and trouble ensues. I really, really liked that encounter and thought it was a really, really great, intense moment for the first episode. For episode 2, I would definitely have to say that the pumpkin monster horde at McCorkle Farm. I loved that the entire time. I was just like sitting there with joy, big old shit-eating grin on my face, enjoying the content, watching these crazy pumpkin monsters chase Lucas and Max, all the way culminating up to them getting in the combine, I think it is, the harvester, and just threshing the crap out of all the pumpkins. I thought it was such a fun scene to watch. I liked everything on McCorkle Farm in episode 2. Moving on to episode 3, I really enjoyed the scene where the kids and Mrs. Baxter were all in the kitchen talking about evolution, kind of giving the hint to what we had going forward for this season. I really, really enjoyed her interactions with the kids. She made them laugh. It was just a cozy little scene and reminded me a lot of my childhood when I was at my friend's house and we were sitting there talking to their mom, cracking jokes with the parents, stuff like that. The other scene I really enjoyed was the sawmill scene at the end of the episode. 11 was a badass, literally just implanting saw blades into the monsters' heads, explosions, just all sorts of crazy stuff going on. I really enjoyed the sawmill scene. In episode 4, that was the episode we got more Steve and Dustin. You can never go wrong with Steve and Dustin. So I really, really enjoyed where they steal the truck from the gas station to lure the monster away, leading all the way up to the incinerator, where Dustin almost gets trapped in the incinerator and Steve saves him at the last moment. And then, of course, Steve saying, "Oh, I was here for a field trip. It's fine. I know how to operate this." And, of course, it's Steve. He's a bumbling idiot sometimes, but we love him. The other one in episode 4 would definitely be that small little moment with Max and Lucas in the arcade where Max is a little bit upset at him and he tells her, I couldn't live with myself if anything happened to you. And she kind of looks down and has that little smile and feels cared for. I loved that little small moment between Lucas and Max. We see a lot of the growth of their relationship in this season, and I'm very much a fan of that. Episode number 5. I laughed my ass off at the beginning of the episode where 11 is tossing Nikki up and down and left and right and then tosses her out the window to keep her away from Hopper and out of his line of sight. I thought that was great. I thought that was super well done. I also really enjoyed the entire sequence of how they were going to get the photo back. Starting with the little bit of planning that they did with the actual model of the Weekly Watcher, leading up to Nancy's crazy little tirade where she goes in and she's talking about aliens and my boyfriend's an alien, crazy this, crazy that. I thought Nancy stole the show there. I thought that was hilarious. And then finally culminating in this just basically massive tornado that 11 forms on the inside of the Weekly Watcher. I really, really, really enjoyed those moments. For episode 6, there wasn't as much in that one. There was just one little point I did like, which was the sewer escape with Lucas and Max. It had just the right amount of tension. It introduced a little bit of horror when the monsters perched over them when they're in the little pipe, and then Lucas comes down, slips on the ball, and this massive chase ensues, all the way leading up to the sluice gate at the end, where Lucas throws his flashlight at it to close it on the monster while Max is barely running away. I really enjoyed that sewer sequence. Episode 7, quite a bit in that one too. I loved 11 in the Void. I have always loved the Void. I love when 11 goes into her Void, and I thought that Tales from 85 nailed the feeling of the Void. It was like perfect. It was spot on. It felt like it was ripped straight from the main show. Additionally, Daniel and Dustin talking in the food mart. I liked the little bit of dialogue that we got from Daniel about how he was a scientist at Hawkins' lab, didn't have any security clearance, worked on a lot of stuff there, and he got just this lousy watch from it. I like that we got a little bit of background for Daniel there, and I also like that Dustin got to talk to an adult and have trust in an adult, at least for a little while. It kind of almost replaced Mr. Clark and the camaraderie that Mr. Clark and him had in the other seasons with Daniel. I really enjoyed having that moment between the two. Also, one of my favorite shots in the entire series thus far of Tales from 85, not the main series, but my favorite shot in Tales from 85, definitely when the monster sneaks into the classroom behind Nikki and Mike, and you hear it kind of growling behind them, and then we get the shot where they just slowly look backwards, and you can see their eyes, like the side eye. I thought that was super cool. I loved that shot. It was very reminiscent of horror movies when the killer sneaks up on them, and that moment of like realization moment of, oh shit. I really enjoyed that shot. Episode 8. One of my favorite lines towards the beginning when 11 is fighting off the monsters. Get away from him, you mouth breather. I love it. I love when they use mouth breather in this series. It's a term I've used in the past, so I don't know what it is, but it just resonates with me. I love when people are called mouth breather in this series. Maybe it's juvenile humor. I don't care. I thought it was hilarious. And then Nikki's garage with the group where they go into Nikki's mosh pit with all of the kids. I thought that was really cool. Seeing all of Nikki's gadgets that she makes and understanding that, oh, okay, so Nikki's going to be crucial to solving the problem this season. Gotcha. I really liked the bonding that they did during that and just all the cool gadgets that we got to see. Finally, in episode 8, I also really, really liked the sewer fight, where all the kids fall down into that big chamber in the sewer, and there's just tentacles coming from just every direction, from all the openings. I really liked that scene. It was very reminiscent of season 3, the cabin fight, where all the tentacles are coming in all the windows, and the big giant flesh flare is attacking all of them. So I really enjoyed that scene. Moving on to episode 9, I really, really liked the breaking into Nikki's house and just how ridiculous it was when the cop looks in the window and provides the jump scare for Max and Will. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And then when they also make the cop's car roll away, I laughed my ass off. I for the life of me, cannot remember the name of the two policemen. And I always struggle remembering the name of the two policemen, but I love that we saw a little bit of them, and I loved the reaction that they had to when their cars rolling away. The one guy blaming the other guy, did you put the parking brake on? Oh, I swear I did. Well, obviously not. I loved that little interaction. I also really liked the headphone throwing sequence in that episode. It was very action-packed. It was a really, really fun sequence. 11 showcased a lot of her powers again, just throwing the monsters left and right, pitting them against the trees, smashing them into the ground. And it was just a fun sequence. Finally, in episode 9, I really liked the lab reveal too, where Dustin's talking about the 2 switches and 50% of secret doors are opened with a secret switch. And he breaks off the one on the one side, and then Will discovers the switch on the other side, and that's what inevitably opens the passage. I love that all to the lead up of when we find out that Daniel was the bad guy. Finally, episode 10, the final episode of the season, there's a couple really great scenes in that too. The entire action sequence where they're defeating the Queen was so cool. Like, it was just super action-packed. It was really well choreographed. It actually was a little tense. Obviously, we knew nothing was going to happen to the kids. Like, this is set between season 2 and 3, so they're going to get out of this. But I liked how tense some of the moments were and how close a lot of them were to getting eaten by the monsters, only for 11 to save him at the last minute, or one of the other teammates to save him at the last minute. I really, really liked the choreography and the pace of that fight. Finally, when the queen is opening up the gate, I thought the visuals were amazing there. It had some beautiful reds that just lit up that entire area. And then when we get the shot where it goes behind the gate and we see from the inside of the Upside Down with all the demo dogs barking at the gate essentially while the queen's trying to crawl through, that was another just top-notch shot. I thought that was such a cool shot. I just really loved the vibe of that fight, and especially the gate opening in episode 10. Overall, though, those were all the scenes I really, really enjoyed. Obviously, there was stuff I resonated with a lot more, stuff I resonated with less. I'm not going to go mentioning all the scenes I didn't like in the next segments, but I wanted to point out some of the scenes I really, really did enjoy through this season. So that ends it for our great segment. Next up, we will be moving on to our meh, okay portion of the review. Now we begin our meh, okay segment of this review, and we've got a fair amount to talk about here as well. So starting off, the first one, all the new characters that we got. So I understand that it'd be kind of hard to develop a series all around just the characters that exist within that continuity, but it bugged me a little bit just the amount of new characters that we had in this. So Nikki, Mrs. Baxter, Daniel are three that are utilized pretty heavily. But then we also have Charlie, Jeff, Rosario, just a growing line of just supporting characters, kids, stuff like that. It just bugs me a little bit that there's so many new characters in this season. I wish that we would have focused a little bit more on building the lore and building the interactions around our existing characters rather than adding a bunch of new people to the cast and putting such a heavy emphasis on them. Like Mrs. Baxter. Although I enjoyed her role, why did Mr. Clark have to go on a sabbatical? Why couldn't we have used Mr. Clark and gotten more tidbits of knowledge from him? I guess it makes sense because she's the one that knows about evolution and would further the story. But it just felt weird that we got so many new characters and so many characters were sidelined. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So, I know it's an animated series. I know that. One of the things that bugged me a little bit, it didn't piss me off to the point where it's in the really section, but it's just something I questioned the entire time, and that was in the back of my mind the entire time. I don't like that this is so much more kid-oriented. Like, I get that we want to be able to introduce kids to the fandom too. We want them to be able to grow up and enjoy Stranger Things, stuff like that, but this being a follow-up to the main series and following the tone, or trying to follow the tone of the main series, it was really weird watching this and having it so kid-oriented. You have to know existing lore from Stranger Things for this to make full sense. Like, you have to know about the Upside Down. You have to know about the gates. You have to know about a lot of the stuff to understand this show. And main Stranger Things was definitely not made for kids. Like, there was no mild cursing, like, whatsoever in this season. And while you don't have to have cursing for a show to be good, like, you don't have to drop the F-bomb. You don't have to drop a bunch of cuss words to make a show good. It was just really weird. We would miss all of these random, like, shits that Dustin would drop, or that Steve would drop, or like the mild curses that we got when they were in a really bad situation. We didn't really get any of that. And as a result, it just felt a little dissonant to the main series because, I mean, Dustin was never afraid to say, oh, shit, when something was about to hit the fan. Steve would say that, stuff like that. So it was just weird not having the kids slip out some of those words when they were in stressful situations. They're kids. Cussing them for them is edgy. It's one of those that has always been part of the main series, and we didn't really have any of that here. Weird nitpick, I know. You don't need cussing to make a show great, but it just made it felt tonally different and gave it some tonal whiplash there. Another thing about this show being more kid-oriented too is the stakes never really felt truly dire. I never really felt like any of the characters were in true trouble because of this catering to a younger audience. You couldn't show as much violence. You couldn't show like much death, stuff like that. But for an example, when Rosario got in her really bad situation with the Jerk-O-Lantern, when they have to save her at the beginning, I think of episode 3, that got resolved so quickly. Like, 11 tore that thing apart, destroyed the monster so quickly, and then Rosario was kind of back to normal. Same thing with getting Dirtbag Charlie back. They got him back so fast. When they were fighting in the sawmill workers were possessed for all but like a minute, and then El ripped them out of the body. So it just, the stakes didn't have time to stick. There were a few exceptions. So the snowplow driver, the coach in the school, and Daniel, those were characters that did die or disappear during the course of the season. So I don't want to completely discount it, and I want it to have credit where it's due, but the stakes just didn't feel as dire this time around because it was more of a kid's show. It was much more kid-oriented. There was a little bit more, I don't want to say juvenile humor because there was still some clever humor, but the humor did feel a little bit more on the nose than other series because this was something that was a little more catered to kids. So, minor gripe. I understand. Again, it's an animated show. I get it. And it's okay to want to bring new people into the fandom. But it's just really weird after all of the darkness of the main series and after just wrapping the series up in January, the first follow-up we get is a cartoon with McDonald's toys licensed in and alongside as promo material as the series drops. It was just kind of weird to me. Another mild gripe I have is the lack of screen time for some characters. So, namely, the two I want to talk about in this section would be Steve and Nancy. So, some characters like those two were barely featured at all. I know, again, that this season was mostly focused on the kids. This was definitely a season for the kids. That's what Tales from 85 is about the kids and their journey. But I just feel like some of the characters were so shortchanged on screen time. We'll reference this later on, but the two I wanted to talk about mostly right now, Steve was only seen in 2 episodes, really the very beginning of one of the episodes, and 1 episode in earnest. So for all intents and purposes, we only really saw Steve in 1 episode. The same with Nancy. She was just in a large segment of 1 episode, and that was it. Previously, these guys were crucial. They were a huge part in these events that were going on during seasons 1 and 2. We saw them a lot. And now they're just kind of there as side characters. And it was just really disappointing to not get more time with Steve and Nancy specifically. Later on, we'll talk about some more of the characters that were missing. But I really wanted to point out like the inclusion of Steve and Nancy and how little we got from both of them. Another minor gripe that I have that is going to be in the meh okay section rather than in the really section is messing with the lore. So I understand they kind of wrote themselves into a corner and sandwiched themselves between seasons 2 and 3, so there's only so much that they can do. But I don't like how we were messed around with the lore and the rules of the universe a little bit. So the gate was closed at the end of season 2. Even at the beginning of this season of Tales from 85, they even say, no, the gate is still closed. So all of a sudden, because of these weird science experiments, we have monsters that are smart enough to completely coordinate with each other, as well as a queen monster that is able to start opening a gate from the outside, all because a chemical is being developed in a lab. Like, I don't like how implausible some of the stuff that's happening is, especially with already established Stranger Things lore. Like, that kind of flies in the face of what goes on later. The whole plot with season 4 of the main series. Vecna opening gates so he can try to get a foothold on Hawkins. It was weird to me that we still had activity that was explained away with no gate open whatsoever. Unless maybe we find out in season 2 that it's at the gate that they were trying to open and work on is partially open with the Russians from season 3. But it just bugged me that we had these monsters that were smart enough to coordinate with each other and still use the hive mind, even though there were no gates open. So just a small gripe. I'm sure things will be written out. We'll figure things out later on. But it just was weird that we're getting the lore messed with and that this was the story that we got. Our last thing in the meh okay category, I went back and forth on whether I wanted to include this or not, but I decided to include it just so we could discuss it a little bit here. But I feel like the plot could have been just a little bit more intriguing, just a little bit more varied. So I did enjoy the season. I enjoyed what we got. It was still a fun thing to watch. But I felt like maybe we could have had a little bit more intrigue in the plot. There were some great moments of intrigue and mystery sprinkled in. I'm not going to discount that. But overall, the plot did feel pretty one-note and pretty simple once we understood what the monsters were. From episode 1, when the monster spews the green glowing spores away and it falls on the ground and makes the hook, I knew it's spreading via spores. And that was a point, like, they tried to make it a mystery all the way up until, I think, episode 4, and it wasn't a mystery. We knew that's how the monster spread and traveled around. I feel like maybe the plot at the end was kind of, again, reduced down to scientist did a stupid thing, despite thinking he was doing the right thing, and then paid the price with his life because he couldn't learn that what he did was the wrong thing, instead pursued it because he thought it was the right thing. If that jumble of words makes sense to everyone. But we've seen this before in Stranger Things. We've seen this happen enough. Arguably, Papa. He thought he was doing the right thing, but in the end it was the wrong thing, and it led to his death because of this program that he was developing. We could also see that with Dr. K. Dr. K didn't die, but they did this whole development of kids and their blood and trying to take them and create new numbers and stuff, and that eventually ended in her leaving Hawkins. So we've seen this plot a few too many times. Same with the Russians in season 3 trying to open a gate. We have these scientists, they think this is the right thing, they need to harness the powers from this gate, and then ultimately it ends with the destruction of all the Russians. So it's just a plot that I've kind of seen recycled time and time again in Stranger Things, and I guess that's kind of the point of Stranger Things, is like the hubris of man, us thinking that we know better, and what we say goes, stuff like that. But it just felt like we could have had something different, something more intriguing, instead of kind of a one-note, essentially expected plot where, oops, this was my experiment, I thought I was doing right, but I'm not, whoops, again. And with that comes the end of our meh okay section. We had a fair amount of stuff to talk about in there. Not a whole lot of like really big offending stuff, obviously, but just minor nitpicks I wanted to talk about. I didn't make me hate the show. I kind of went both ways on either of them, but I felt like I just had to air some of those grievances, which made this show less than it could have been. Next up, we are moving on to our really section, and we will have a lot more to talk about in there that I do think could have been greatly improved. Okay, so now we are in the nitty-gritty of things. We are in our really section, and do I have some things to talk about in here as well. So first up, the lack entirely of some characters. So, we briefly touched on this in the meh okay section with Nancy and Steve, but I feel like the issues we're going to talk about here are even more egregious. So I really, 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 really do not like that at no point whatsoever in this season we got no Joyce. No Joyce whatsoever. Now, whether that be because there's licensing disputes and they can't use Winona Ryder's likeness or can't use that character for some reason, maybe that's why we saw it. But why? Why did we get no Joyce in this season. At this point, Will had just been kidnapped and taken to the Upside Down. He had just been possessed by an eldritch being, a monster from the Upside Down, and brought back to himself. The events of season 1 and 2 happened. Joyce is just going to let Will go willy-nilly. I'm hilarious. But Joyce, is she really going to let him just go around unsupervised, not doing anything, not checking in with him at all? Like, it just bugged me to no end that we saw nothing of Joyce in this season. The same can be said about Jonathan. We did see him once. He was in the show for maybe 20 seconds in the first episode, and then we got no Jonathan. Again, for someone that just went through everything that Will went through, his mom's not there, his brother's not there, we don't see any of them whatsoever this entire time. And I'm assuming that I need to pay more attention to the timeline, but this show, I feel like, takes place over the course of maybe a week. So all of this stuff going on, Will going left and right and here and there and all that. At no point did his mom need to check on him. We got no scene with her or Jonathan whatsoever. I'll stop rambling because I could go on about this a lot, but no Joyce and barely any Jonathan. What? Another character we saw nothing of was Murray. That was more understandable. At this point in the story, Murray's not a big deal. He's not a huge player in it. Like, he was in it just for a little bit of season 2, and he doesn't really become a big player in season 3. So that one I'm willing to forgive. If we don't see Murray in the next season 2, I understand. Erica, same thing. She's not really a big player until season 3, so not really seeing her either. Whatever. And then the only other one that I'm kind of upset that we didn't see, and I would have loved to even just see him for a part of an episode. He was mentioned, but we never got to see Billy. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity. I wish we would have been able to see Billy a little bit. I really hope we get to see some Billy in season 2. But, I mean, we can't get everything that we want. I understand why some of these characters are missing, but it just bugs me to no end. And it bugged me from episode 1 all the way through 10. I was just waiting to see Joyce, and she never showed up. That bugged me so much. This season also felt very, very tonally different than the main series. It may contradict an above point because I did say the series was well paced, and I do still stand by that. Like, we had a lot of moments of levity and funny moments and character building moments, but we also had a ton of action sequences in this. So I get it. It's an animated show. There's a lot more they can do with animating and action sequences that they couldn't get away with in the main series. However, as a Stranger Things show, I think we got way too much action this season. Every single episode, there was something crazy going on. Obviously, like, episode 1, we've got a monster chasing Nikki through the town square and downtown. No one's around to see it. Nothing whatsoever. Like, we have the insane action going on the beginning of episode 1 and where the snowplow fight's happening, and that just from the get-go, just action. This was supposed to take place between seasons 2 and 3. With the amount of craziness that did happen in this season, it felt a lot more like it should have taken place closer to like season 5. I felt like there was more action, and this felt more like an assault on Hawkins than season 5 did at some points. We're not going into season 5. I loved it. I understand why a lot didn't happen in that, and a lot of people thought it was a little slow-paced. But this was just insane. The monsters were on the loose. They were attacking multiple people. And they were just kind of everywhere. I feel like at this point in the story, especially us knowing what we know now with Vecna and the Mind Flayer being like teamed up and all of that and the bad guys, I feel like the Hive Mind would have been a lot sneakier and not attempting to draw as much attention to itself as it did in this season. Because we had just monsters everywhere. We had so much stuff going on. So it just felt very tonally different that we had dang near constant action. Every episode there was an action sequence going on. So it just felt like maybe if we dialed it back a little bit, it would feel more tonally matching to the other Stranger Things stuff. Nothing wrong with having some action, but we had a ton of action in this season. Okay, so these next 2 points are my last 2 points. They might be a little bit of a tirade, but they definitely, they kind of blend in with another. So the first point is, why this show and why now? So as much as I did enjoy watching this, and again, it's a fun ride, I'll probably watch it again. If a physical version comes out, I'll add it to my Stranger Things collection. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed watching it for what it was, and will take it for what it is as its own separate entity. But the question is begged. The question comes up, why this show and why now? I stopped and asked myself multiple times what this season is trying to be. I'm very glad we have more Stranger Things content, but I'm dumbfounded as to what this show represents, why it was created, what the point of it was in the first place. Like, obviously, I got a shirt from it. I have some merch. It's animated. So was the sole purpose of this to sell action figures to kids, sell products to kids? Are we actually trying to further the Stranger Things lore? Because everything that we saw in this season didn't further the lore, really. It kind of took away from it. With the whole, like, oh, the gate's closed, but we have monsters coordinating with each other even though the gate's closed. And Vecna had to do some weird sneaky stuff to open gates in Season 4. But in this one, there's monsters just willy-nilly running around and it could open a gate on its own. So it doesn't feel like this was trying to follow the lore to begin with. I feel like maybe had this show come out between Season 4 and 5, when we had that massive gap to wait in between, maybe I'd be a little bit more apologetic and maybe I wouldn't be as, like, upset about this. But a lot of it did really feel like a cash grab to me. We just had the main series end. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, we've got an animated show. Okay. I mean, I was excited when it was announced. But the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, what is this show for? One of the most egregious offenders for me with this is not even 5 days after Season 1 debuted. 5 days after the first season of this show, or this entire first season. 5 days after it premiered, April 23rd. 5 days later, on April 28th, we already had an announcement that we were getting a second season of it this fall. So we had to wait dang near 4 years for Season 5 of the main show to come out, which I get it. Animation takes less time. It's a little bit, I don't want to say simpler, but it's an entire new ballgame. It's not all these crazy CGI effects they have to do on real people like the main show. But we had to wait dang near 4 years for Season 5 of the show to come out. And then literally Season 2 of Tales from 85 is going to be out in 6 months this fall. It just smells a little bit fishy to me and seems like we are trying to shove Stranger Things down people's throat. Be like, hey, you remember Stranger Things? Hey, do you remember Stranger Things? Don't forget about Stranger Things. I feel like we need to let the series breathe a little bit. Because I know they're working on another spinoff as well. So are they just trying to pump out as much Tales from 85 as they can up until the first spinoff comes out? Because that's kind of what it feels like to me. It just feels like oversaturation. Same thing, like there were so many merch tie-ins. They had merchandise announced before the show even came out. There were McDonald's Happy Meals, stuff like that. So it just feels like we are getting Stranger Things rammed down our throat with no rhyme, no reason. They're just producing content to produce content. So on the other side of this, this can kind of be its own point, but is this show canon or not? Like, for those of you that don't know, when a show is canon or something is canon to a main show, that means the events and happenings in that show relate exactly to and are part of the main timeline of the original show or the original content. The more I think about this season, the more I don't think that this actually happened. between seasons 2 and 3. I don't know if it's been officially confirmed whether the show is canon or not. I know before it came out they mentioned yes it was, but now I'm questioning, like, I don't know if this show is canon. Because so many things happen in the show, character-wise, town-wise, and the fact we're getting even more this fall cements to me this can't be canon. Like, I know you can't go back and rewrite the main show and do all this after the fact. Like, once the show's out, the show's out. So you can't rewrite it and add in these characters and add in these references and stuff when you make a show years down the line, because that's just not how time works. So, obviously, time lesson here, guys. But with the way a lot of the kids have befriended Nikki, the lessons that she continues to teach Will, that Jonathan has been teaching him, that Joyce has been teaching him, and now Nikki is teaching him, like, oh, it's okay to be a freak. It's okay to be different. And then some of the town folk disappearances that have happened in the season, like Snowplow Man going missing, the coach, Daniel, all of this, like, the events in this season feel a little too big, and like there's a little too much happening. The destruction of the food mart, I guess that can be chalked up to winter and the storm blowing the tree into the food mart. But with everything that's happening in this season, the events are too big to not be mentioned in later seasons, especially Nikki. They have befriended her so much. She is part of the group. She has her own D&D character by the end of the series. It just feels like too much happens in this season that hasn't been mentioned or referenced whatsoever in the main show for this to be canon, because this was a shoo-in. This was developed after season 4 was created. So, I don't know. It's a very fun ride on its own. I enjoyed it for what it was, but going back and thinking critically, and the complications that are added and the things that are hard to explain away just really makes me doubt that the events of this series are canon, and that it's just supposed to be more Stranger Things so we can sell more Stranger Things, so we can sell merch, so we can get people excited for the next series. Unless it's revealed at the very end of all of these seasons, whenever it's over, that this was just a giant D&D game that Mike put on, or a giant D&D game that Will put on, and Nikki's a figment of their imaginations. I just don't see any of these events being canon, and that kind of stings a little bit when originally I believe it was said it was going to be, and it just feels like this show exists to keep Stranger Things fresh in the minds of people. So, I don't know. There's a lot of complicated thoughts there. I know I kind of rambled, but it just feels like this series exists just to exist at some point. Great moments in it, but it just feels like this series is existing to exist. Whew! That was a lot to cover about just a short 10-episode, 30-minute per episode season of Stranger Things. This review definitely got a little bit longer than I thought it would be, but I have a lot of complex thoughts. I'm a huge Stranger Things fan. I love the main show. And even with the gripes that I had about Tales from 85 and some of the concerns I had, I still did really enjoy it as a show. There were so many fun moments, like the action moments that we did get, even though there were a lot, were so much fun to watch. 11 was just a badass in this show. She felt more powerful in this show than she did for the majority of the main series. Like, she was a badass, just tossing things up, down, left, right. It was really fun to watch those. I also really enjoyed a lot of the slower character moments that we got. There were, again, some great character moments we got throughout, especially with Lucas and Max. We had a couple between Mike and 11. I really enjoyed when she confronted him in the cabin. It's like, no, you let me choose. I loved that. I thought that was great. We got more character development for 11. So there were great moments throughout this entire season. I will watch it again at some point. It's not something that I dislike so much and that I question so much of that I won't watch it again. But there were just a lot of things that I had questions on. Overall, so my episode reactions as I went through, a lot of the ratings were a lot more positive for the episodes because I was in the Stranger Things fever. I was right after watching them was when I was rating them. So now I've taken a step back, and now that it's about a month later after the series has came out, I have like an official score that I can give it, and it is less than I would have given it had I aggregated all the scores together for my reactions. Kind of like I said in my reaction video. That's why I wanted to give myself time to make this video and really, really think what I thought, what my true thoughts were about this season. So, Stranger Things, Tales from 85, Season 1. My overall score for the season will be a 6.5 out of 10. Not awful, not fantastic. I feel like right in that range of 6.5 to 7 is where I am. I don't want to quite give it a 7. I don't want to give it a 6 or a 5. It wasn't that bad, but I think it lands right at a 6.5 out of 10. Was it fun to get more Stranger Things? Oh God, yeah. Was it fun to watch? Oh, absolutely. But a lot of the things that have been bugging me have been weighing it down a little bit, and I've really had to rethink it. Like the show possibly not being canon, questioning why it exists, not having Joyce there at all. It's just going to continue to just pick at the back of my brain. But I think the series deserves a solid 6.5 out of 10. Maybe ask me on a really good day, it'll be a 7. But I think 6.5 is a good place to put it. Overall, though, not really a whole lot more to say about the series. I enjoyed it for what it was. I am very excited for Season 2 to come out to see where they go with that, how it potentially changes my opinion of this first season, what they're going to do with the lore, what the storyline is going to be. Oh, excuse me there. I'm excited to see if it's going to be more of the same or if we're going to subvert expectations and it's going to match more the tone of Season 3. That remains to be seen. Season 2 does come out this fall. That being said, though, guys, that is the end of our second ever content review on this channel. I want to thank every single one of you that stuck around and listened to me ramble on and on and on about this. You could have chosen to go anywhere to get your review. You could have chosen to spend your time with anyone on YouTube, and you guys chose to spend your time here. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. That means so much to me that you guys are here just listening to me ramble about the stuff that I love. Going forward, we're going to continue to do product unboxings, episode reactions, skits eventually. There's a lot of plans I have for the channel. It's just one of those things. Work is crazy busy all the time, takes up a lot of my time. So I try to get as much content out that's quality without just rushing crap out as I'm able to. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. Subscription is free. It will make sure that you know everything that's coming out on this channel between my reactions, reviews, unboxings, all that. It helps me out to reach more people, and we get to talk about physical media and shows and eventually video games, all sorts of cool stuff together. So please consider subscribing if you haven't. Also, if you got use out of this review, give this video a thumbs up. Please go like that video. It, again, helps the reach, helps the algorithm get out to more people, and lets me know if you guys like what I'm creating or if you're not resonating with it. So please do that. And then finally, comment down below. Comment what you think about the series, what you think about my review, what you think about the channel, anything you feel like commenting. Let's get a dialogue going, and let's start chatting down on the comments, guys. I'm excited to interact with some people. So let's come on. We got this. Other than that, though, guys, thank you one more time for being here. I appreciate every single one of you. I love each and every one of you. And until our next video, everybody, peace.